so you don't have to go too close.
Okay.
They pick it up good.
Yeah.
Because sometimes if you go close, the feedback is
Right,
really
right, right.
bad.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, everyone, we're gonna get started. Can everyone hear me okay?
Oh, maybe not.
Could everybody hear me okay? We're gonna get started. Before I do an introduction, this is a hybrid event, so if there's any questions, feel free to please come up and go to the podium and ask your question so that the virtual attendees could also hear your question. If you don't want to come up to the podium, that is absolutely okay. You could just raise your hand and shout out your question, and I'll repeat it so that the virtual attendees can hear. And for virtual attendees, just please remember to use the chat option instead of the ask a question so that we can see it up here. Okay, so I'm Naomi Gadji, and I'm the Open Science Room Deputy Chair, and I am very honored to present the speaker for today's table talk and a true pioneer in the field, Dr. Thomas Yeo. Dr. Yeo is affiliated with the National University of Singapore, where he holds a number of positions. He is also currently the senior editor of Neuroimage and affiliated faculty of Harvard Medical School. He graduated with his PhD in electrical engineering and computer science from MIT. After graduation, he held 2 positions as a research fellow, which I will let him tell you more about. Amongst the many awards he received the 2019 OHBM Early Career Investigator Award. His research interests include brain imaging, machine learning, neuroscience, and mental disorders. He is also a Clarivate Analytics highly cited researcher. While I can continue the introduction, I know we are all very excited to hear his valuable advice. So I will let Dr. Yeo finish up introducing himself through my first question, which is, tell us a little bit about your journey after your PhD and how you chartered a career path.
Hi. So first of all, thank you to. Oh, I guess I need. Thank you to Naomi. Everyone can hear me fine? Yeah. Okay. Thank you to Naomi for inviting me to this table talk. To tell the truth, I was actually expecting like a round table of like 10 people. I was not expecting a room of people. So yeah. So the first question was about what happened after my PhD. Is that right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So actually, my PhD was actually in computer science, basically developing algorithms for image processing, image restoration, and segmentation. And then after that, to tell the truth, I'm probably not the best person to take advice from because my path has been quite random. I just do what I feel like doing. A lot of time people have some strategic thinking or something, but yeah. But for me, it has kind of been a random path. So basically, I was working on brain image restoration and segmentation. And after that, I was thinking to myself on, I could go on one end, which is the acquisition part, doing NMR physics, or I could do on the more applied stuff, right? What do people use image restoration and segmentation for? And so at the time, my PhD advisor told me that Randy Buckner was looking for a postdoc, and he's collecting a big data set, in this case, the Genomic Superstruct project. So I thought, hey, it's a good opportunity. And at the time, actually, I also, as I say, it's very random. I also happened to have kind of a bout of cancer. So as a result, I was under this scholarship, and they let me stay on to get the cancer treatment, and I also then stay on to do the postdoc with Randy Buckner, right? So then after that, I really got interested in cognitive neuroscience, and then I moved on to become a postdoc with Mike Chi at Duke NUS in Singapore. And after that, again, randomly, right, the time comes, right? I was like, I'm tired of being a postdoc, right? I want to do something else. Like, should I go to the industry or should I go to the, stay in academia? And so I started looking for positions. And then very luckily, once again, I have very good mentors who advocated for me. In this case, Mike Chi. And eventually, I got a position at NUS. So that's how it was. Through pure luck and unluckiness with the cancer. Yeah.
So if anybody has a question, come up to the podium or just shout it out and I'll repeat it. Do we have any virtual questions? Nobody?
What advice do you have for people who are worn out, burnout, kind of sad about the state of academia now, but still would like to stay?
Right. Yeah. To tell the truth, is a very good question because I actually do feel some level of burnout myself after this 2 years. I'm not sure, is it like a midlife crisis? I'm getting old. The pandemic or what, right? But I definitely feel a little bit burnout myself. I'm not sure I have very good advice for you, but I think in general, you should try to do what's best for you, right? So some of my students, they're like, I would love for them to stay, right, in academia, right? But, they want to go into industry. And I say, good, you should do it, right? So whether you want to stay in industry, whether you want to stay in academia, you should do what's best for you. And it's good to have a good support network for yourself, which I know is very hard during the pandemic. I mean, many of my students, they're only attending OHBM for the first time, right, even though they've been doing this for quite a while, and I feel really bad about that. But hopefully, since you're now here, you can actually try to build up a network of friends. And in fact, for me, coming to this meeting has really energized me and relieved a bit of my burnout. Seeing friends that, you start seeing friends that you kind of don't see them for a year, right? Or in this case, 3 years, right? And you get to see them again, and it's just so wonderful. It makes me feel, energized again, right? But again, I have to say this, there's no right answer for everyone. And hopefully you make good friends here at OHBM who can pull you through.
So I was wondering if throughout any experience you've had being on a hiring committee or talking with other hiring committees, if you ever noticed a trend towards either being biased for or against postdocs who come from that same institution. That is, if you
from the same institution.
Yes, so that is, if you, let's say you have a dream of being a professor at X school, does it work for or against you to do a postdoc there?
Good point. I think there is definitely a bias that exists, right? In general, well, especially in Singapore, they're very worried about nepotism, right? So the provost, for example, the hires are extra worried, right? If you have someone coming from the same institution, right? Is this guy actually or girl or whatever, right? Is this person actually really good, or this faculty is just trying to like help their own people, right? It's unfortunate actually, but in general, I think it would be advisable to actually move around and gain your experience if your goal is faculty positions. Yeah, I know that makes it very hard. Especially if you have a two-body problem, if you have kids, even by yourself, it is hard to move around from places to places. Yeah, there's no good answer to that. Yeah, does that answer your question?
Yes, thanks.
Yeah, right.
So you attribute your career path to luck, but also to your mentors. So how do you...
Luck. Good. There's luck to get good mentors. Yeah. Right, but yeah.
That answers my question is how do you find good mentors and be a good mentor?
Wow, that's a really tough question. I guess to find good mentors, actually, a good mentor does not necessarily need to be like, just to be clear, doesn't need to be like your PhD supervisor or your postdoc supervisor, right? Here at OHBM, well, at least from the day I came to OHBM in 2009, I wasn't well known for anything back then, right? But I feel that people are very friendly here, right? And you can just go up to, do not feel afraid about going up to, more senior people and introduce yourself to them. And I would think that for some of them, perhaps you can tell that this person can be very helpful, right? In which case, it's possible that they might be able to give you some advice. So that's what I would say. As to another thing would be, I guess if you're looking for a PhD supervisor or postdoc supervisor, it's also good to talk to the people in their lab to see whether they like it or not, or people who have already left, right? Because sometimes people who are still in the lab might not feel comfortable talking about things, right? And people who have just left might give you a better pictures. Yeah, that's what I'll say. Right. As to your second part about what makes a good mentor, that's really hard. To tell the truth, I'm not so sure myself. So, personally for me, I don't know if I'm a good mentor or not, but personally for me, I really take the people who are in my lab, in my sense, I mean, it's almost paternalistic, right? In my mind, they're like my kid, right? And I always try to look out for them. You know, that's why I said if you want to go to the industry, some of them I feel like they're really suitable for academia. But if you want to go to the industry, I'm like, this is great. Let me know, like, do you need me to write to someone? Do you need a reference letter? Do you need to ask some of my contacts in the industry? Yeah. So in my mind, a good mentor would be someone who wants their mentee to succeed, right? Not in the shape of the mentor, right? Because we're all different, right? So it is trying to help the mentee achieve what he or she wants, right? Rather than what the mentor thinks the mentee should do, right? Yeah.
Would it be okay if you guys have questions, just come up to the podium and ask, just so that the virtual attendees could hear?
Is there a question on the app too?
Yes. Oh, on the chat, right? Or somewhere on the OHBM app?
Oh,
I didn't even check that. We haven't gotten questions on there.
Should I go ahead with my question while you? Yeah, okay. So you mentioned that you considered industry yourself. I feel like there are many students who are interested in industry, but it's a bit like shrouded in mystery. And like, how do you break into it? And what's the best way? Like, what sort of jobs are you even qualified to go and do in industry? Do you feel that we're doing enough in academia to support those students? Or how do we go about, besides being supportive and saying, yes, you should go if that's what you want,
Right.
how are
right.
we,
Right.
taking the mystery out of that and actually giving hands-on support?
Right. I guess I'll start with a personal one, which is in my group, because we work on machine learning and data science stuff. So there's kind of a very clear set of industry that they go into. So for my stuff, there's actually no problem at all. And in fact, once the first student goes to this tech company or whatever, the juniors actually reach out to them, and actually some of my juniors have gotten good positions because of that. So some of my newer students have got a better position because their more senior students are already in industry helping them. But what I say is just applicable to the kind of stuff my lab does. For the wider set of for the wider society, I think that's a bit harder. Because the kind of possible jobs are seriously endless. Like you could go to consulting, right? You could work for something which that might not be very similar to your research at all. You can go to industry that actually make full use of our research. For example, if you are working on like behavioral sciences, right? You could go. There are many like companies that hire this sorts of people now, right? Or if you are doing like brain-computer interface, again, there are many new tech companies that are working on this. So there are a lot of opportunities. You're right that finding these opportunities are not easy. It's not I guess straightforward. Like where do you start? Again, this is where I think that going to like let's say now that here at OHBM, unfortunately, even among all of you, not everyone is gonna stay in academia, right? Well, I say unfortunately, but it's not unfortunate, right? It's totally fine to go to industry, right? In fact, many of my students who are in industry they're very happy, okay, right? So the friends you meet here, being from the kind of the same research community, right? The kind of jobs that you guys target probably might require a similar set of skill sets, right? So the networks you have here might be very helpful for you to, I bet among all of you, like most of you would probably be into the industry at some point, right? So this network will be helpful. I have also found Twitter to be quite helpful. Although, frankly speaking, I think Twitter is sometimes very negative. It can be tiring, right? But on Twitter, I mean, you can see that some people who I've never met, right, but who is in our area, there's clearly they transition to industry, including, for example, Tao Yakoni, but I know him, right? But there's actually a lot of other people who have transitioned, and that could be a good opportunity for you to contact them, right? And I guess there's other social networks, but I'm a bit old-fashioned, so I don't use, for example, LinkedIn or something, but that is supposedly quite good for getting contacts as well, yeah.
So we have some virtual online attendee questions, so I'll go with this one first. So what was the best and what was the worst advice that you've been given, and what was the best and worst choice you made?
Oh gosh. I feel like this is like a job interview. Yeah. What's the right? Do I really need to answer that? What is the worst advice? Gosh, I really am not sure. Yeah.
Okay, we can move on.
Right. Sorry about that.
Okay, so then this is
Yeah.
like our first time we've been getting questions in the.
Sorry. A common advice I've been given is to really just do what you want, and things will work out. But I have to tell you that does work out for me. But frankly speaking, it could be a terrible idea, right? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you could be really passionate about something and you're really good at it, but sometimes due to luck, it just does not work out. So in some sense, that's also like a bad advice, I guess. Yeah.
So our next question is, obviously publication record is important in looking for academic jobs, but what else do hiring committees look for?
That's it.
Right. So I guess as someone on the who has sat on some committees, I think the publication record is just like what you see on paper, right? In some sense, it kind of just get you through the initial cut, right? But ultimately, I think hiring committees do look at vision, right? If you're able to, I have seen candidates whereby, if you look at their, citation, they don't look as good or whatever. But once you talk to them, you're like, wow, this person like has vision. Like her citations might not be much, but I would totally like hire her, right? And I've seen candidates whereby, their citation looks very good. When you talk to them, you're like, oh, okay, so yeah, I'm not sure what you're really trying to achieve here, right? So I think having citations, publications is just one thing. Ultimately, if you want to be faculty, you need to have a coherent research program. You need to tell people like, oh no, what would you, if in 5 years, in 10 years, what would you like to achieve, right? And that could change, of course. And in fact, for me, that has changed as well. But it's not just about publication record. Although, as I said, that is important. Contrary to what some people on Twitter might say. Yeah.
Okay, so our next question, I'm actually going to go to one, there's two that are kind of similar, and this one's been like climbing up really quickly. So, never mind, now it's at the top. Since we're all nerds, any advice for networking for shy people? And then there's another question about just, networking in general, so I guess we could go both of
For
those.
shy
the same
people. Right. So I guess, to tell the truth, I'm not that much of an extrovert myself. So I think even for introvert, right? You are most introverts will still be comfortable with their close friends, right? Correct. So I guess what would be useful would be if you're friends with your lab mates and that lab mate is like social butterfly, right? So then that could be a good way to if you hang out with your lab mate, you could hang out with the social butterfly a bit more and get to know a lot more people. That could help you relieve your anxiety a bit. Yeah, that works for me, right? I like to hang out with Daniel Margulies, because, you know, he introduced me to everyone. Everyone knows Daniel Margulies, right? Right. And he does this crazy shit, so, yeah. It's fun, yeah, right.
Do you have a question? Yeah.
I was wondering if we could discuss choosing topics when you start a new project or a new position. I think one of the early thoughts that I had for sure when I decided on to have an academic career is I think I'll never work on aging or Alzheimer's because everybody works on it. So what am I going to do to contribute to that, you know, in the sea of the noise? But also, there is a lot more eyes and you'll get better readership. There's more funding available versus doing something niche where you can do a lot of novel things, but there won't be so much attention. Like,
Right.
I wonder if we can talk about
Right.
that.
Actually, this is a very good question, which is that it's very hard to predict what will be important or not, right? I remember when I was in high school, and at the time they were already talking about like the genetics, the molecular biology revolution, and I was thinking, but you know, by the time I get into this, it's gonna be too late. The hype will be over. But in fact, actually, if you look at the recent mRNA vaccine or whatever, we're not even at a peak yet, right? So my point is that you obviously don't want to just do whatever everyone else is doing, right? But I'm saying even in the hottest area, there might be a very interesting way you can contribute, right? And what is important is that you want to find an angle that is best for you. What is your skill set or your background knowledge that can contribute uniquely, right, to the area, right? So when I was when I joined Rennie Buckner's lab, right, I don't have much cognitive neuroscience knowledge, right? So really the cognitive neuroscience knowledge is from him. But I guess what I brought with me was my kind of machine learning kind of background from my PhD. And so even though, and at the time, I guess resting state was becoming really exciting and hot, right? But if you think about it, then you're right. At the time, everyone's jumping into it. So it's actually a very hot topic. And it might seem like that's, but there might be nothing else to do already, right? Steve Smith had there was the Mike Gracious paper. It's like 2004. Mike Fox with his anti-correlated networks. And when I joined around 2009, Steve Smith had his PNS paper showing task and rest correspondence. So it's like, wow, it was very exciting, but everyone is jumping on it, right? But at the same time, because of kind of my knowledge in machine learning, right, it really complements Randy's knowledge about neuroscience well. So as a result, we were able to do something that was interesting to the community, right? Yeah. Does that answer your question, kind of? Yes. Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, what are the main differences that you found working for an American university versus University of Singapore?
Oh, good point. So first of all, I would say that it's probably not easy to compare because the American university I went to are atypical, right? In the sense that they are very special places where all the best people go there, right? And so what is very different is that, for example, in Boston, right, there's this huge, concentration of brilliant neuroscientists and imaging scientists working on the same topic. So as a result, it is, you want to know about anatomy, right? You can just walk down the street and, go to this famous anatomist, right? And ask him I found this, what do you think, right? So in Singapore, it's a bit harder in that sense, in the sense that we have a few strong brain imaging people, but we work very closely together. But certainly the critical mass is not going to be someplace it's not similar to someplace like Boston, right? Does that help? Yeah. There are many differences between the U.S. and Singapore as well. I mean, another difference would be the PhD program in Singapore is a lot shorter. It's about 4 years. I guess to the Europeans that sounds about right? But in the U.S. when that comes from, a PhD easily take 5 years or more. Yeah.
Okay, so we have another online question. You mentioned you had a random path because you only did what you liked, which is this person's goal in a career. How did you discover what you like, the next step, and I think this is important, when to move on to the next thing?
Oh gosh. I guess what I like for me, how do I know what I like? You know, when I'm doing something and it doesn't feel like a chore, right? So and when you I'm this crazy person where I'm very excited about something, you know, I'll be thinking about that research problem in the shower, you know, well, that kind of stuff, right? I'll be like, oh man, there's a bug in my code while I'm showering, and then like went there and I fix it, that kind of stuff. I think at least for me, naturally speaking, if I like to do something, you know, I'm very happy doing it. Whereas if I don't like something, it's just such a chore. That was the second part to that question, right?
Yeah, like what, the next step.
Oh, how to move on.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Moving on is actually kind of the same thing. Yeah, which is that if I find something to be a chore, then you know I start thinking to myself, right? Is this something I still want to do, right? And personally, for me, I like doing. I get bored, right? So obviously, I'm known for my work for like brain parcellation and whatever, but I've been doing a lot of other stuff, right? Using machine learning to predict disease progression. Now I'm looking to like biophysical modeling, right? Because I'm sick of machine learning as well. And then now more recently, I am midlife crisis. I'm thinking more about like clinical applications. Some of the stuff that Mike Fox and Andrew was showing actually was about like brain stimulation, for example, is very exciting for me. So this is something that I'm looking into setting up. So as your life progresses, I'm kind of sorry, it's nerd here. Your cost function would change, right? Yeah, and it's fine, right? Yeah.
Okay, so we'll take another virtual question. Is it a good or bad idea to choose a very different topic and imaging modality to focus on when going from PhD to postdoc?
Very good question. So, in my case, my PhD was mostly using structural MRI, right, and looking at image restoration, right, surface restoration. I was working with Bruce Fischel and Paulina. And so for my PhD, I switched to fMRI and looking at more brain networks, right? So it's quite different. I think there's pros and cons, right? By going into a different area, you kind of bring a unique perspective to it. But I think the key here is that if you, as you do your PhD, you start building a perspective of a special set of skills you have, special knowledge, right? When you move on to a new modality or topic, you should think about how your past experience actually can bring a unique perspective, right, on this new topic, right? So you're not really going into this new topic, new modality with like as a blank slate, right? You're no longer a PhD student, right? But instead, from what you have learned as a PhD student, you could actually use that knowledge, use that perspective, and that you bring new insights into the new topic. So I think it's actually not a bad thing to search, yeah, right. As long as there's some form, as long as you can envision some form of a link between the two topics, right? But of course, it's also possible, I guess, if you hate your PhD topic so much and you want to switch completely. No, but it's true. Even if you hate it so much that you want to switch the topic, yeah, I mean, presumably you still learn something from your PhD, right? So you still have your own unique perspective that could be helpful for the new topic. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll go to another online question. Let's see. Okay, any advice, comments, or thoughts regarding teaching-focused academic paths?
Oh, I don't have a very, very good suggestion for that. When you say teaching-focused, presumably they're going to some place where it's not research-focused, right? So where you might teach like maybe 2 courses or 3 courses per semester. I'm not sure I've good advice for that, but I guess what kind of I guess it's not in person, so
Yeah.
I'm not sure what kind of advice that person. I guess for a teaching focused position, To tell you the truth, I'm not sure how important research might be, but my understanding is that most liberal arts college still like some low level of research, just so that, for example, so that you can teach the undergraduate how to do a bit of research, right? So then for those undergrad in the liberal arts college, they might themselves want to go on a research path. But I guess if you're interested in a teaching, more of a teaching career, you would probably, okay, again, this is off the top of my head, right? Because I'm not in a teaching university, so I'm not fully sure what they are looking for, right? But off the top of it, my sense would be it's important to build your teaching portfolio, right? And this teaching portfolio could come in the form of being a teaching assistant for the courses at university, right? It could, if your university allowed, it might also allow you to, the university might also allow you to develop your own course or something, right, which you can teach. I've also seen people actually creating their own educational videos and putting up, or YouTube and so on. So actually, in fact, there was a recent student in NUS. We saw some of his teaching videos on deep learning and machine learning. We thought this person is really good, so we're actually asking him if he wants to stay on as a lecturer in the future. So yeah. So I think if you're interested in more of a teaching career, you should try to build a portfolio. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll do another online question. How to have a guilt-free work-life balance? For example, not working on the weekends and not being guilty for not working on the weekends.
I don't have a good answer for that. Yeah. In my case, it's easy because I have kids now, so I just spend the weekend to them. It's much more fun than some of the other daily activities. More tiring too. So yeah.
If any of these stick out to you, want to answer?
Oh, I
Do
think
we have it in person? Okay.
I'll just go ahead and just stay here. No, actually, can we talk about kind of your experience with mentorship? How is it that, I'm sure a lot of students have come and go through your lab. How do you know with postdocs and grad students, oh, this person is really going to work out, or this person won't work out for me? And by the time they leave your lab, what are you hoping that they have accomplished?
Sorry, when you say
So the
When-
start
when-
and the
yeah.
finish, really.
oh right.
Yeah.
Did
So
you-
what makes them, in your mind, how do you identify somebody who will be a good fit for your lab early on? And then by the time they leave, what do you hope that you've seen this student or trainee accomplish by
Right.
the time they leave?
I think every trainee is different, right? It's extremely hard. I have no idea, frankly speaking, how to tell whether a student will be really good or not, right? For me, I kind of take a look at their CV, what research they've done. I have to tell you, I personally also look at kind of their GPA or CAP as well, because my group do a lot of engineering, mathematical stuff. So I want to know if I look at their math courses and computing courses to see if they are strong in that. All right. I also would ask them some interview questions related to programming and all this stuff. But my approach has changed over the years. Because to be at least I feel that for my group, what works is you have a mix of good engineering skills, but also being able to communicate well. And earlier on, I would over optimize, right, for some aspect, and then some students I just they're odd even by engineering standards, right? So right. So then I'm like, okay, sure, okay. So I should also try to have someone who's more well-rounded and so on. So I have no idea how. Even now, after I have quite a few students, I have no idea how to pick well, right? Sorry, you have some other questions to think?
By the way, biggest fears,
Yeah.
how do I know how to surround myself with good people, right? I think that's going to be really important in this career. But anyway, by the time they leave the lab.
For PhD students, is that right?
PhD students and postdocs,
Right.
like, you want them to have accomplished this stuff, this
Right.
kind of point, you know? Like a minimum goal or something.
Not. I mean, sorry. I do tell them I would like, you know, I would like it if I shouldn't be telling this. Okay. Yeah, I would. Oh man, my training's here. I would tell them that I would want 2 or 3 papers, but really I'm kind of like, you know, this is just not really true. I hope they didn't hear this. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Basically, yeah. Oh no. Okay. No, it's fine. It's fine. Personally, for me, there in my experience, there are kind of, you know, it's very hard to select students, right? Some of my students do turn out, come in a bit weaker in some aspect. Let's say poor in communication, right? Some comes in turns out to be a bit weaker in, let's say mathematical or programming, right? And in my mind, all they need to do is to improve. And what is amazing is that they all can improve, right? Even the weakest, so-called weakest students, right? They can improve, right? And to me, that's all that matters. But ultimately, of course, for graduation, for the university level, they do need to have some publication. So I have to say, typically in practice, what happens is that my student might have 1 publication before they graduate, plus another one that in the pipeline. Yeah. So yeah, but even though I tell them I want 3, but that never happens. Yeah. Yeah, never happens. Yeah. Yeah. Now they know. Yeah.
Okay, so you kind of touched on this already, but what was your vision as a PhD student?
I have vision as a PhD student.
Yeah.
Oh no, this is what I mean. I really have no vision. I just like, as a PhD student, like, I just read papers. I was like, this is interesting. You know, can I extend that a little bit? A lot of my papers ideas come from interacting with other PhD students and with mentors, actually. Yeah. My first ever paper was on this spherical wavelet stuff, and that comes from taking a class. And I was like, oh yeah, you know. And because I was working with Polina and Bruce Fisher on surface representation, I was taking a class on wavelets, so I thought, oh, can we do that for the sphere, right? So my other papers are from, you know, just talking with, you know, the postdoc at a time in our group, Mert, right? So Sabunju. So a lot of my papers are that way, from talking to people. So I guess the key thing for me is to, you know, be curious, right? When you read a paper, like, you should be like, oh, okay, can I improve on this further? And talking to people, right? And if you have if there's someone you like in your lab or in your broader group, right? Or OHBM really, actually, and you find that talking to them is like intellectually invigorating, keep them around. Actually, I mean, not keep them around, it's like lock them up. But you know, a lot of time, you try to, you know, keep them in close contact and chat with them, right? So I've been very lucky throughout my career to have a few of these key people along the way, right? Where, you know, I meet, yeah. And even for some of them, I've been collaborating for many, many years, on and off for many, many years. Yeah, right.
Anybody else? Okay, these questions keep moving around, so it's hard to keep track. Where did it go? Okay, so some of us started the PhD in our 30s or even later. Is an academic career feasible?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. In general, I think the way the hiring committee works is that they almost never look at your age, right? I mean, unless you're like 60 years or something, then they need to think about that, right? But most of the time, in some sense, the clock starts ticking after you get your PhD, right? So if you get your PhD when you're like, whether you get a PhD when you're 25 or 35, or even 40, I don't think it matters, right? Yeah. I do know a few people who started really late in life, and you know, like Sandy Wells. I guess he's not in this committee, but he used to do a lot of mutual information-based image registration. Yeah. So he started his PhD very late in life, and he's doing fine. Bruce Fischel too, actually. Bruce Fischel, I think after his undergrad, he did a software engineering stint for quite a few years before he went to academia. So yeah, it's totally possible. Yeah. And in fact, I felt that this was kind of a mistake I made, which was that after my PhD, I was on a Singapore government scholarship. So I had to, after the undergraduate studies, I have to go back to Singapore, right? And at that time, I had kind of a choice was to, either finish they call it the bond, finish my work commitment to Singapore for like 6 years, and then do my PhD, or do my PhD and then finish the 6-year thing, right? 6-year commitment, right? So at the time, I just felt that, oh yeah, I'm gonna do this young, right? And so I just went for it, and then after that, I went back to Singapore for 6 years to fulfill the work commitment. But on hindsight, 6 years is nothing, right? I could have developed a lot of interesting work experience, improve myself, know better about what I want, right? And it would have been fine, yeah. So I'm not saying what I did was a mistake. I'm just saying that, it's totally fine if you work a bit or do other stuff before you start a PhD. Yeah, it's not a problem.
Okay, so I'm going to summarize some of these online questions. Your work is widely cited. What advice would you give to someone or an early career researcher to make sure that their work stays impactful and they're kind of, going with the trends?
Right. So in my mind, the interesting thing is that a lot of time at least for me, the papers that most cited might not be my favorite, right? Actually, in fact, my first paper, it was just I mentioned on the spherical wavelets or whatever, right? In some sense, because I proved some mathematical theorem, right, or whatever, so it will actually be true 200 years from now, right? And so in my mind, that is still one of my favorite things because, that the theorems I prove will always be true, right? Whereas some of my most cited stuff, I don't know, I'm sure, they'll be overturned at some point. So in my mind, I would like to dissociate between, I guess, citation versus kind of impact, right? You can actually be quite impactful, actually, even if the citations might not be that much. And this jives with what I was telling you that sometimes you, on the hiring committee, you talk to a candidate where the citations are not so much, but you're like, oh wow, this person really has a clear vision of where to go, right? So I think it would be good if in academia we try to not just look at citations. But the truth is actually, unfortunately, many institutions does look at that. So in my mind, that's an issue, right? But hopefully in the future, that won't be the only thing that people look at. Did I answer that question? I can't remember. There was other points. Okay.
Yes, so it's kind of related. Now where did it go? Okay, so there's a lot of emphasis on publications, but no one actually teaches us to write in academic writing. So what is your advice for improving writing? Sorry, these keep moving, so it's sometimes hard to read. But yes.
Right, how to improve the academic writing. Actually, is to start off with, this is something that you have to develop with your supervisors mostly, or someone who can edit your manuscript, right? I remember when I wrote my papers with Randy Buckner, the track changes come back, and it's completely all red, right? I was not insulted at all because, it was just a much better version of what I wrote, right? And that's where then you have to take an active role in comparing what you wrote and what your supervisor changed, right? And try to infer, why one is better than the other. And I'm also quite shameless at looking at other people's, if you read a paper and you like it, right? I would highlight certain phrases that you're like, oh wow, this is a very nice way to put it. And I wouldn't use it exactly in my papers because that would be plagiarism, right? But but you can certainly learn a lot from people whose paper you like, and highlighting certain phrases, certain sentences about you know, how that person explained or qualified this, and you could try to do something similar for a paper. So I remember when, in my 2011 paper on the brain networks and stuff, we were trying to justify the number of networks or something, and I can't exactly remember what Randy finessed the writing, but he had a very nice way of like phrasing it so that as a reader, you're like, oh yeah, it's fine. We don't need to know the right number of networks. This is totally fine. You know what I'm saying? He's very good at that kind of stuff. So if you have papers that you like, and you're like, oh wow, you know, you could borrow some of the phrasing. Obviously, you need to rephrase it, right? And yeah, it works very well. Yeah. It works. Yeah, that's how I do it for myself. Right. Yeah. Hope that helps. Yeah.
How do you manage some of the existential crises of like fMRI and like whether it's actually giving us information we think like putting so much of your time into this
Right.
research field with an uncertain return on investment when it comes to clinical applications?
Right. So as I said, so I think fMRI has promise, right, in certain areas. So so this is why I was saying I kind of have like a midlife crisis, right? Yeah. Which was that's why I was telling you I was looking more into some of the clinical applications myself. Yeah. For example, using individualized brain networks for TMS targeting or brain stimulations. Yes.
So you did that like in response to your midlife crisis?
Kind of, right? Right. I mean, I've only started on it. We don't even have like the grant money to do that yet, right? But my point is that I guess for me, at least for me, instead of constantly, you know, being like frustrated, right, about you know, is this gonna have clinical impact? I just decide I'm just gonna try it myself, right? And there are many other, I think, applications that might be possible, such like pre-surgical mapping and that kind of stuff. I think some of this brainish stuff that could potentially be promising, right? So you just, yeah. But as I said, also not everyone needs to do the clinical applications, right? There is a role for people to develop methods and so on. It's just that I have a midlife crisis, so. Right. Yes, yeah.
I imagine in your like more successful and senior position, you sort of have the like sort of privilege of like trying something new whenever you want to.
Right.
But when someone is doing their PhD or a postdoc or even an ECR, like they just don't have the opportunity to like, ooh, midlife crisis, changing. And so I wondered how you would advise navigating that. And I know you said
Right.
like pivoting and stuff like
Right.
that. But it can be difficult to sort of like reestablish yourself in a new space when you're supposed to be expert at something, or if you want to change completely.
I totally agree. So even now, you know, I don't know if y'all were at my talk. I had a talk Monday about disease heterogeneity and stuff, which I've done some work on. But truth to tell, those work are much less impactful than my work on like brain parcellations and so on. So it is hard to switch. But on the other hand, you know, if you are not satisfied with what you're doing, like, you know, what's the point, right? So even though some of my other stuff has so-called less impact, right, in quotes, however how you measure it, but I still think it's worthwhile. So this clinical application stuff might also not work out, right? But you got to try. Now, obviously, as you said, it's easier for me because I'm a PI, right? So it might be easier for me to switch. But I think a lot depends on your supervisor, right? I've been lucky working with people whereby with Paulina, for example, my PhD supervisor, she was fine with me like doing whatever. Similarly, when I was a postdoc with Mike Chi, he was also fine with me doing whatever. So in fact, when I was a postdoc with him, I did this study on like meta-analysis of, you know, brain map or whatever. I mean, he does sleep, right? He really doesn't care. I mean, he was interested in the topic, but it's not really his bread and butter. But he was totally fine with me doing it. So one thing you can do is that you can try to talk with your supervisor. It is possible that if you're being funded by a grant or whatever, there may be some grand deliverables that needs to be achieved, right? But it is possible that he or she might be quite flexible in letting you pursuing some other projects, especially something that he or she might be interested in as well. Yeah, so this is something you need to work with your supervisor about. Yeah.
So we have about 7 minutes left, so we'll take one more in-person audience question, and then I'll get to maybe 1 or 2 online questions. Anybody? Okay. All right, so someone wrote in, you mentioned that the clock starts ticking after your PhD. If we did not have a very productive PhD for various reasons, what can we do to not look bad in front of like a hiring committee or something like that?
Yeah, this is what I mean by the publications only get you through the door, right? Get you through the interview stage, and as long as you have enough to get you through an interview stage, actually you could really excel, right? And in fact, it's not just interview stage. A lot of this is also by word of mouth. I have a colleague, I won't mention the name, where during his PhD, he actually published very little because his supervisor was not supportive at all. So he would have papers sitting there and it was just not looked at, right? But after he became a postdoc, he started becoming more productive because the new supervisor was more supportive, right? And now he's actually very famous, right? And that's because during his postdoc, actually, that's when he started publishing. So he had like maybe one conference paper. In engineering, like a conference paper would be like kind of a 4-page thing, right? For his entire PhD. But he's obviously an amazing guy. And during the postdoc, he started publishing. And when at conferences, when people talk to him, it was very clear that this guy has a future. And indeed, he's doing very well now. So even though you might have a bad start of a PhD, it's not impossible. Yeah. Right.
Anybody else in person, or I'll get to the last question. I didn't see this one. It kind of snuck up to the top. So how to handle the 2+X body problem, especially since legal situations, money changes from country to country.
Sorry, legal situation, money changes from country to country? Sorry, what?
This right here.
The 2-body problem?
Right, I know, but I'm trying to understand the second part. The legal situation change. Oh, I see. Right, you're talking about legal, like, for example, the spouse might not be able to work in that country, is that right? Oh, yeah. Sorry, so for the 2-body problem, usually it's a lot easier if your spouse is, your partner is, it's not in academia because, unfortunately, in academia, it is a lot harder to find 2 positions at the same time. But at the same time, if both you and your partner are in academia, actually, I'm not going to lie to you, it's going to be more difficult, right? You need to find a place which will take both of you. But in my mind, and again, I'm not sure if it varies from country to country. It's good to be upfront with at least for me, it would be, if at NUS, right? I wish some candidates would be upfront with me that I had a recent case whereby a candidate was interviewing, and we essentially offered him the position, but he ended up going somewhere else because it turns out his spouse both of them managed to get a position somewhere else. But had he mentioned that earlier to us, right, we could have tried to see if that works or not. So, yeah. So one thing about this is that sometimes you kind of also need to be upfront about it, right? But I do know that in other countries it might not work this way. People might feel quite sensitive about such stuff. But certainly in my institution, if you're interviewing at NUS, right, I think it's worthwhile to be upfront. We usually try to see, I've handled a few cases now where we usually try to get both partners' positions in the university or in another university close by, right? Yeah.
Okay, and the last question. Should a PhD student have different goals, priorities, depending on whether they want to go into academia or industry?
Good point. So in some sense, yes. If they are going into the industry, some of the skill set, like, so okay. So I'm gonna confess, a lot of people in my group. I use a lot of MATLAB, right? So that's supposed to be something shameful to admit here. But as you know, in industry, right now people prefer using like Python or R or something, right? So in that sense, for people in my group who wants to go in industry, I also encourage them to pick up Python as well. They can use it as part of their projects, or if they didn't have a chance to use it for the projects, I try to emphasize to them that in their spare time, or if time allows, they should really pick that up. And that worked out pretty well for some of my students, whereby they actually kind of finish what they need for their thesis, and I give them time. I'm like, okay, yeah, you just slowly wrap up this paper and try to try to learn Python or like PyTorch or whatever. And then a lot of time in this industry, you need time to do this, prepare for this interview questions as well, especially for data science. So yeah, so this is just something that people in industry might have might need to adapt their schedule a bit to make sure that they have the necessary skill set for industry, right? And unfortunately, it varies from field to field. So I know what in my area what people should learn. So that's what I kind of try to tell my students. But I guess in other areas I'm less sure. Yeah.
Okay, well, this was really great. Thank you so much for being here. I know
Right.
all appreciated this very much.
Thank you for having me here. And once again, I feel like a lot of the advice is from my own personal experience, so it may not apply to you. Okay, so yeah, selection bias. Yeah.